Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. What wasn't stated in my bio is something that I'm proud of as well, is that I'm the grandson of Joe Flash Gordon, who put the fear of God in pitchers in the American League from 1938 to 1950. 9-time All-Star, 5-time World Series champion, 1942 MVP, and 2009 inductee into the Baseball Hall of Fame. And surprisingly, you'd think that my grandfather would have taught me how to play baseball, but no, in this case, he taught me how to hold a fishing rod. And I'm happy he did because, as was mentioned in the bio, I really enjoy outdoor activities in our great state of Idaho. I want to start off by, as was mentioned in the bio, I'm on the board of directors for the Greater Idaho Falls Chamber of Commerce, so I certainly have to promote my state and my community when I'm back here. But I want to talk just briefly about Idaho. And Lord knows this town has certainly seen its share of partisanship over the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to add to that. I think it's important to talk about our state in terms of its politics. 85 of 105 in the legislative branch of government in Idaho are Republicans. It's one of the most red of the red states in the United States. All of our constitutional officers are Republican. Our governor is Republican. Our 2 congressmen, our 2 senators are Republican. You would be hard-pressed to find a state that is more red than Idaho. Some other statistics. In the state of Idaho, nearly 1 in 7 of our population of about 1.55 million are hunters. About 217,000 people in the state. About 5% of our state possess a concealed weapons permit. So you can see that we have a very rich history in Second Amendment rights and gun ownership. And I think that's important as I discuss what I'm here to discuss. For a bit of background about our state, we have one of the most powerful articles and sections of our Constitution in order to protect the right to keep and bear arms of virtually any state that I've seen in the country. And I want to read you just some snippets of our Constitution. Article 1, Section 11, the right to keep and bear arms. It says, the people have the right to keep and bear arms which shall not be abridged. So in other words, not be curtailed or minimized in any way. But this provision shall not prevent the passage of laws to govern the carrying of weapons concealed on the person, nor prevent the passage of legislation providing minimum sentences for crimes committed while in the possession of a firearm. And then I'll skip a little bit forward. Nor shall any law permit the confiscation of firearms except those actually used in the commission of a felony. Now, in the state of Idaho, only the legislature may pass laws as they relate to firearms possession. However, in 2008, before I was elected into the legislature, there was a preemption law, a bill that passed that granted the colleges and universities to, quote, regulate in matters relating to firearms. And now through policy, all of our colleges and universities have instituted firearms bans, even for concealed weapons permit holders, in my mind, in violation of the Idaho State Constitution. Now, again, take into consideration 217,000 people in our state of about 1.55 million are hunters. So there are people who carry long guns. Again, about 5% of our population are registered concealed weapons permit holders. I think it's also important to mention that through these firearms bans on college campuses, they also ban retired and off-duty law enforcement officers from carrying on campus. In addition, campus police officers don't carry weapons on Idaho's campuses. Now, I carried a bill during the 2011 legislative session called House Bill 222. Now, that would have allowed 70,000 Idaho concealed weapons permit holders to carry firearms on campuses with the exception of undergraduate student housing. And that was done as a compromise based on previous attempts to pass legislation to allow concealed carry on campuses. So in other words, in the state of Idaho, you must be 21 to possess a concealed weapons permit. Generally speaking, those who are in undergraduate student housing on campuses are under 21. So it sort of makes sense that we wouldn't allow firearms in undergraduate student housing. Now, the result of that was that House Bill 222 was one of the most fiercely debated bills of the 2011 legislative session. And this bill passed the House. There's 70 members of the House that I'm a member of. It passed by a vote of 41, 28, and 1, but it was stalled in the Senate State Affairs Committee. Now, the reason I mentioned my grandfather's baseball career at the beginning of my discussion was because, like my grandfather, I'm highly competitive, and I hate to lose. In my 2 terms in the House, I've only lost 1 bill on an up or down vote in 3 years. So I don't lose bills. And technically, this bill, House Bill 222, is not lost. It is merely held in limbo in the Senate State Affairs Committee. There was an amendment, a motion to send that bill to the Senate floor for amendments, and that motion failed. So therein lies the bill still in that committee. Now, I think it's important. I mentioned the makeup of the legislature and the strong Republican nature of our state. So, again, you would think that a bill like this would sail through our legislature. But I wanted to talk just briefly about who opposed the bill and kind of the reasons for which they did oppose it. And for those students who are here, you might want to take note of this for when you try to do something similarly in your state. First of all colleges and universities opposed the bill, House Bill 222. And the reasons that were given included there would be increased suicides, that the crime statistics are already fairly low on colleges and universities. Therefore, this was not needed. Now, imagine for just a second if you lived in a community where crime was relatively low and you had, say, a county sheriff or a city police committee or a police chief say, you know, in our city of X, crime is relatively low, so I'm going to ban firearms. That's what the universities have done in the state of Idaho. Another reason was football rivalries could turn deadly. And that's, I can see people shaking their head. They've probably heard this one before. The other one was the NCAA won't host tournaments at the schools if firearms are allowed. Total red herring. Check this out with the NCAA. They chose not to even weigh in on this issue in the state of Idaho, but those who are opposed to House Bill 222 continued to foster that red herring throughout the debate. And then the other one was that concert promoters will bypass Idaho and the schools will lose revenue. Now, in the state of Idaho, if a concert promoter wants to come to, say, one of our major universities, they rent a facility. So as a renter of a facility, they can choose to ban firearms already, and they do. So that was a non-issue. Also, those who opposed the bill included major police departments. What a surprise. But I think it's important to mention that these departments have lucrative contracts with each of the universities to provide law enforcement on the order of, in one case, about $800,000 annual contract with the university. So not surprisingly, the police departments are going to oppose campus carry legislation. Now I wanted to talk, and again, I started out talking about the partisanship, and here's where it comes into play. There were 16 Republican members of the House who opposed House Bill 222. Many of these people had stellar Second Amendment records that were touted by the National Rifle Association. In fact, many of these people who voted against this bill had signed had filled out an NRA flyer as candidates saying they would support the right for concealed weapons permit holders to carry on college campuses, and then they did an about face when I brought a bill and they opposed it. There were 4 Republican members of the State Affairs Committee in the Senate who also opposed the bill. And so that brings me to what's next. Mark my words, House Bill 222 will be back with amendments as possibly as the next legislative session, because I'm hearing about some proposed amendments that people have in mind. In other words, what they're hoping to do is to preclude people from carrying weapons at football, basketball, sports venues, as if violence doesn't happen at those events. I think we've seen at Dodger Stadium that that's not the case. And with Idaho undergoing a redistricting process and a recently passed closed primary election system, several who opposed House Bill 222 will miraculously become supporters during the next election year. They will see the light. They will hear from their constituents. They will have to explain to their constituents why they received an F grade from the NRA when previously they had an A grade. So this bill is, I guess one way to look at it is it's like a Ouija board. You can't get rid of it. It will be back. In summary, I think to leave you with some good advice for the students in particular is read your state constitution. There may be something in your state constitution, like Article 1, Section 11 of Idaho's constitution, which I believe is ironclad. I think I should mention that there is currently a lawsuit that is in process in the state of Idaho filed by a University of Idaho law school student who is challenging the university to be allowed to have a weapon in his on-campus house because that is his only home. And I believe, based on the wording of our Constitution, that if that case ultimately goes to the Supreme Court, that student will be victorious. To me, it's very clear. This is a constitutional matter in my state. Another item, expect that the university administration will be your biggest opponents, but encourage the student and faculty to support your side. In our case, we had students, we had faculty, we had instructors. A cute little old lady came up and told us how she's fearful leaving the campus late at night, walking to her car across a parking lot, a dark parking lot, because she's not allowed to carry her concealed weapon on campus. Explain to lawmakers that an individual's right to self-protection does not end at the border of a college campus. And I think this is a critical point. This issue is not about arming students. That's something that the media in the state of Idaho promulgated, and I was constantly having to battle that. They made it sound as if when you're a student and you're registering for a college or university, you get your class schedule, and you're going to get a concealed weapons permit. Oh, and by the way, you're also going to get a gun. And that's just not the case. This is merely, it extends the right of those who already have a concealed weapons permit to carry that firearm concealed on campus. And furthermore, again, partisan nature, don't expect all Republicans to support this. Many that I learned in our legislature have this sort of, talking about moose, kind of a guttural reaction that they couldn't support this. And I heard this time and time again. You know, I support the Second Amendment, but I don't support your campus carry bill. And what I would say to those lawmakers who told me that is, now let's extend what you just said to the First Amendment. I support the right to speak freely, except on college campuses. Or I support the right to vote, except for college students. Or I fully support the right to assemble peacefully, except on campuses. So you can't support the other parts of the Constitution, particularly the Idaho State Constitution, and then just thumb your nose at this one. So with that, thank you. Appreciate being here.